Hello everybody, this is Dr. Vishal Devedi from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati. And what we were discussing about a few of the chapters related to your biology course under the IIT PAL program, which is for the class 11 and 12. And in this series, we were discussing about the chapter Biotechnology Principle and Processes. And if you recall what we have discussed so far, we have discussed about the biotechnology and its potential in bringing the new and improved products from the different types of organism. And in this particular context, we have also discussed about that the biotechnology is using the two different approaches to design the new product or to improve the existing product. Either it is using the genetic engineering to generate the genetically modified organism, or it is utilizing the bioprocess or bioengineering approaches to optimize the product production from the particular organism. And in the same discussion, we have also discussed about the we also discuss about the genetic engineering, and genetic engineering approach relies on the two aspects. Either it is utilizing the different types of tools such as the polymerases, excision enzymes, ligases, and the vector, or it is utilizing the different types of procedures. During these procedures, it is utilizing all these tools. Whether it is the isolation of the genomic DNA, or the polymerase chain reactions, or the restriction digestions, apart from or the ligations, competent cell preparations, transformation, or the screening of clones. So this is a general scheme what we have discussed so far. There, where what we are saying is that the you have to first isolate the genomic DNA of the particular organism from where you are interested to isolate a particular gene. Then, with the help of the polymerase chain reactions, you are going to get the gene of your interest. And then once you got the gene of interest, you are going to do with the recession digestions. And with the when you do the recession digestion, you are going to get the gene with the cohesive ends. Similarly, you are going to isolate the plasmids, and these plasmids we are going to do the recession digestion. So it is also going to develop the similar type of cohesive groups. One for the uh, first enzyme, the second is for the second enzyme, and then both these cut gene as well as the cut plasmids are going to put under the ligation reactions, and then the ligation reactions are going to ligate these two DNA fragments, and it is actually going to give you the chimeric DNA. Now that this chimeric DNA has to be transformed into the host of your interest. In this case, for example, we have taken an example of the bacteria, and then you are going to do the transformations of the bacteria with this chimeric DNA. And for that, you are going to prepare the competent cells, as well as you are going to do with the transformations. Once you do the transformations, you are going to have the two different types of bacteria: the bacteria which is going to have the gene of your interest, or the bacteria which does not have. So for example, in this case, you are going to have the mixed populations, and then what you are going to do is you are going to use the different types of screening tools, and that is actually going to give you the finally selected uh, uh, bacterial strains, which are actually going to have the gene of your interest. So following these schemes, in the previous lectures, we have discussed about all the tools what you are going to use following these procedures. We have discussed about the polymerases, we have discussed about the transition enzymes, we have discussed about the ligase, and we have also discussed about the different types of vectors. The vectors which are actually either be a cloning vector or the expression vectors, and what are the molecular components are required to prepare a suitable vector. For example, you can have the origin of replications, you can have the selection markers, and if you're talking about the expression vectors, you also require the promoter, so that you will be able to enhance, you will be able to facilitate the protein productions. So following this, we all now in this particular lecture, we are going to start discussing about the procedures. So the first procedure what we are planning to discuss is about the isolation of genomic DNA. So why we need to isolate the genomic DNA? Because you have to isolate the gene, and the gene are actually going to be a part of a particular genome. So there are multiple sources from where you can be able to isolate the source of your gene. Like for example, you can have the prokaryotic sources like the bacteria, or you can have the different types of eukaryotic sources. I have taken these examples like the yeast, animal cells, or the plant cells, but these are just the representative cells. Ideally, you are going to isolate the DNA or the genomic DNA from the two sources. Either it could be a prokaryotic source or the eukaryotic source, because the differences are going to be in terms of the cellular structures and how you can be able to explore the cellular structures to isolate the genomic DNA. Now, the genomic DNA isolation is very much depends on to the composition of a particular cell. For example, in the prokaryotic cell, you have a cell wall outside, and then within that you are going to have the plasma membrane, and within the plasma membrane you are going to have the chromosomal DNA, which is actually being present freely into the cytosol. And then apart from that, if you talk about the two different types of eukaryotic cell, whether it is the animal cell or the plant cell, their composition is going to be different. For example, in the case of plant cell, you are going to have the thick cell wall, and following that, you are going to have the plasma membrane, and then within the plasma membrane, you are going to have the membrane-bound organelles, including the nucleus. And within that you are going to have the genomic DNA, which is actually going to be present in the form of a complex of the DNA protein complexes. Compared to that, the animal cell composition is little different. So where you are going to have the animal cell, and it does not have the cell wall outside, and it also has the plasma membrane, and within the plasma membrane you are going to have the different types of membrane bound organelle, whether it is the mitochondria, Golgi bodies, or the nucleus. So within the nucleus, which is also a membrane bound organelle, you are going to have the DNA, which is going to be present in the form of the nucleoprotein complexes to form the different types of chromosomes. So compared to the prokaryotic cell, you are actually going to have the more and more hurdles, more and more boundaries to cross before you can reach to the DNA, and that's how you can be able to isolate the DNA. So there are boundaries will be different in the case of the prokaryotic cell versus the eukaryotic cell. In the case of prokaryotic cell, you're going to have the cell wall which is made up of peptidoglycan, and below to the cell wall you are going to have the plasma membrane, and below to the plasma membrane you are going to have the cytosol as well as the chromosomes. So if once you want to isolate the genomic DNA, you have to break all these barriers. So in the case of eukaryotic cell, in the case of prokaryotic cell, you are going to break the cell wall with the help of the enzyme, which is actually going to degrade the cell wall. Once you degrade the cell wall, you are going to reach to the bacterial cells. And the bacterial cell, then you have to degrade the plasma membrane. Once you degrade the plasma membrane, then the cellular content is going to be released, and the cellular content what is going to be released is the cytosol and the chromosome. And ideally what is going to be present in this particular picture is the proteins, the DNA, the lipid, and the carbohydrate, where the DNA is going to be present along with the protein in a complex form. And if you remember, the DNA in the prokaryotic cell also, the DNA is present in complex with the protein also. Compared to that, the plant cell is also going to have the cell wall, but here the cell wall could be of three different types. Either it could be made up of cellulose, um, or it could have the lignin, or it could have the pectin. So you can have the lignin, you can have the pectin. Uh, and depending on the different types of biomolecule which are actually making the composition of the cell wall, you can have to use the different types of enzyme. For example, in the case of the lignin, you have to use the ligninase, the enzyme which is actually going to degrade the lignin. For the pectin, you have to use the pectinase, the enzyme which is actually going to degrade the pectin, which is present in the cell wall, or for the cellulose, you have to use the cellulase. Once you are going to treat the cells with these enzymes, it is actually going to degrade the cell wall. And once it is going to degrade the cell wall, you are going to access the plasma, you are going to access the plant cells, which are actually going to have the plasma membrane. Now, once you degrade the plasma membrane, then compared to the prokaryotic cell, you are going to get the membrane bound organelles. And now, in this membrane bound organelles, you are going to have the nucleus. So from out of these membrane bound organelles, you can be able to isolate the nucleus, and then the nucleus is also going to have the membrane bound structures. So you are actually going to degrade those membranes, and then the nucleus is actually going to release its contents. The release content is going to be the protein, the DNA, the lipids, as well as the carbohydrate. Compared to the plant cells, the animal cells are much easy to perform because animal cell does not have the cell wall. So the first barrier you don't have to break. The first thing what you have to do is you have to directly attach onto or directly treat the plasma membrane with the reagents so that it is actually going to degrade the plasma membrane. Once you do that, you are actually going to see the membrane bound organelles, and within that you are going to have the nucleus. And once you isolate the nucleus also has to be degraded by the different types of reagents which are actually going to be membrane, going to degrade the membranes, and ultimately you are going to get the mixture of the biomolecules like the protein, DNA, lipids, as well as the carbohydrate. So what you see is that the procedures are different in the case of prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cell, but the end what you are going to get is the mixture of the biomolecules, the protein, DNA, lipids, and carbohydrate. And from all these mixtures, now the ultimate task is that you have to extract the DNA, keeping all other molecules away. So you are going to isolate the DNA, but you are going to remove the protein or the lipids as well as the carbohydrate by the treatment of the different types of reagents. Let's see how to achieve that. So first thing what you have to do is you have to lyse the cells with the help of the detergents using a lysis buffer. So the first you are going to take out the cell from the into a Eppendorf, and then you are going to incubate those cells with a lysis buffer. The lysis buffer is actually going to contain the detergent, and detergents are actually going to be a solvent. So they are actually going to dissolve the lipids, what is being present or what is being responsible for making a plasma membrane. So once you dissolve the lipids, so it is actually going to remove the plasma membrane. So once the plasma membrane is removed, the cell is going to be lysed. Once the cell is going to be lysed, then you are going to get the mixture of all the biomolecules like the DNA, protein, lipids, and carbohydrate. Now what you have to do is you have to incubate these cells with a digestion buffer containing the proteinase K as well as the SDS. So once you do that, the proteinase K is a protease and it's actually going to chew the protein and it is actually going to generate the peptides. So once you generate the peptides, it is actually going to degrade, and it is actually going to either generate the peptides or it may actually reach to a level of amino acids. So once you treat the cells with the digestion buffer containing proteinase K and SDS, the proteinase K is actually going to digest the proteins which are actually being present in the form of a complex with the genomic DNA. So what will happen is the genomic DNA is packed along with the protein in most of the eukaryotic cells as well as in the prokaryotic cells. The organization is more complex in terms of the eukaryotic cell, but organization is less complicated. But in both the cases, the genomic DNA is present in the complex with the proteins. And these proteins are actually has to be removed from the genomic DNA so that you can be able to isolate. There are two ways in which you can be able to isolate the protein. Either you degrade the protein with the help of the proteinase K, and that actually is going to chew up all the protein only except the genomic DNA. So now what you have is you have a genomic DNA, you have the chewed protein either in the form of peptides or the amino acids, and then you are going to have the lipids as well as the carbohydrate. Now from this mixture, you are going to isolate the genomic DNA by the absolute alcohol precipitation. So once you do that, it is actually going to precipitate the DNA, but this DNA is actually going to have the protein, a minor fraction of protein, and the lipids as well. So because you are from a complete complex mixture, you are isolating that with the help of the absolute alcohol. So that's why the protein DNA is not going to be as poor as what is being required for the genetic engineering applications. So this DNA has to be further purified with the help of the more reagents so that you will be able to get the high quality DNA. How you can do that? Then you have to do the purification of genomic DNA with the phenol chloroform mixture. So phenol chloroform mixture, when you add that to the purified genomic, to the precipitated genomic DNA, it is actually going to give you the two phases, the aqueous phase as well as the organic phase. And in this step, the phenol is going to denature the remaining protein and keep the protein in the organic phase, and the lipids are also will go into the organic phase. So what happen is when you are actually going to have the chloroform as well as the phenol, the phenol it is actually going to, so phenol is going to degrade the protein, and that's how it is actually going to have the organic phase. So organic phase is going to be at the bottom, whereas the aqueous phase is going to be on the top. So aqueous phase is actually going to have the DNA, because DNA is very polar, so it is actually going to be remain in the aqueous phase, whereas the organic phase, which is the non-polar, it is actually going to have the proteins which is being damaged by the phenol as well as the lipids. So so now what you have to do is you have to spin this, and once you spin that, it is the protein as well as the lipids are actually going to form a precipitate at the bottom, or they will be present within this organic phase, whereas the DNA will remain in the aqueous phase. And now what you have to do is you have to just collect this aqueous phase, and then you have to again do the precipitations. So the genomic DNA present in the aqueous phase is again precipitated with the help of the absolute alcohol. Absolute alcohol means the 100% alcohol or 99% alcohol. After that, the genomic DNA has to be analyzed onto the agarose gel, and a good preparation of genomic DNA gives an intact band with the no visible smear. So I have shown you this whole scheme of isolating the genomic DNA in the pictorial form. So what you have to do is first you have to lyse the cells with the help of the lysis buffer. Once you do that, it is actually going to give you the cell lysate, where actually you are going to have the DNA, the proteins, and all other things. Then what you have to do is you have to do enzymatic digestion. So enzymatic digestion is actually going to be with the help of the proteinase K as well as the SDS. Once you do that, it is actually going to degrade the proteins, and that's how it is actually going to remove all the protein except the minor fractions. And then after that, you have to do a precipitation with the absolute alcohol. So that is actually going to precipitate the DNA, but this form of DNA is not going to be pure because it still contains the small fractions of the protein as well as the lipids. And then what you have to do is you have to do a purification with the chloroform and phenol. So once you add the chloroform and phenol 1:1 ratio, it is actually going to have the two phases. One is the aqueous phase, which is actually going to be the top phase, and where the DNA of your interest is present, whereas it is also going to have the organic phase where the phenol is present, and phenol is present along with the precipitated or the denatured proteins. So what you have to do is you have to just take out this organic phase, and then you have to again precipitate that with the help of the absolute alcohol, and that is actually going to give you the DNA in the precipitate. And if at this stage, if you want, the DNA is actually going to be present in the form of the threads within this liquid. So if you want, you can actually be able to isolate this without even doing the centrifugation. You can just take a cut tip, and you can just spool this out from the aqueous solutions. And then what you have to do is you have to use the millicube water or the sterile water, and you can dissolve this, and that is actually going to give you the genomic DNA solution. And that genomic DNA solution you can be able to use into for the downstream genetic engineering applications. Now, one of the important thing is that the genomic DNA has to be analyzed onto agarose gel to test whether it is good or bad. So this is what I have shown you, a typical genomic DNA gel where I have isolated, or I have isolated genomic DNA from the Plasmodium falciparum, the bacteria, the strain of the infectious organisms which is responsible for malaria. And what you see here is that it is actually going to give you the intact band, and this intact band is also going to be closer to the well, because the genomic DNA is very heavy compared to the plasmid or the other kind of DNA, and that's why it is not going to migrate very large, and it is going to remain within the well. If you are actually not going to handle, or you are not going to perform these procedures very precisely, because what happens is, while you're doing all these, you might actually bring the shear stress and all other kind of thing. Then the genomic DNA is going to be break open, and once the genomic DNA is going to break open, it is actually going to form the fragments of the different sizes, and in that case you are actually going to see a streak of DNA, which means it is going to have the DNA of the different sizes. So this is going to be the intact genomic DNA, and then you're going to have some more fragments like that. So in that case, it is actually going to give you a smear, like from top to bottom. And that is not a good quality of the genomic DNA for the genetic engineering, because once you have the fragmented DNA, you might have a gene which you are interested to isolate, but that gene may not be present in any of these fragments. Instead, it may be present half on this fragment and half on this fragment. In that case, you will not get the PCR of the complete gene. So this is very important, that you should check the quality of the DNA onto agarose gel. So before going further about the how to isolate the genomic gene of your interest from the genomic DNA with the help of the polymerase chain reactions, let's discuss about the agarose gel electrophoresis. So agarose gel electrophoresis is also called as the horizontal gel electrophoresis. Horizontal gel electrophoresis, the electrophoresis in this gel system is performed in a continuous fashion with the both electrode and gel cassette submerged within the buffer. The electrophoresis chamber has two platinum electrodes placed on the both ends of the both ends are connected to the external power supply from a power pack, which supplies a direct current or to the DC voltage. So this is the electrophoresis chamber, where you are going to have the two electrodes, one on this side, the other one is on this side, and those two electrodes are being connected to a power pack with the help of the leads, and this power supply is actually going to supply the DC voltage or the direct current voltage. The power what you use in your home is actually a AC voltage or the alternate current voltage. So this alternate current voltage does not have the polarity, whereas the DC current is always having a polarity of the positive as well as the negative, and that's why it is advantageous to use the DC voltage, because it is actually going to maintain the polarity so that the biomolecules are actually going to resolve as per its charge. For example, in the case of DNA, it is going to be negatively charged, so it is actually going to run towards the positive electrodes. The tank is filled with the running buffer, and the gel cassette is submerged inside the buffer. There are additional accessories needed for the casting of the agarose gel, such as the comb. So this is the comb to prepare the different types of well, so that you can be able to load the DNA in the different wells. Then you require the spacer as well as the gel casters. These are the different types of buffers and reagent what you use for agarose gel electrophoresis. You require the agarose, you require the ETBR. So ETBR is required for the staining of the agarose gel to visualize the DNA. You know that the DNA does not have its intrinsic, color or something, so that you can be able to detect. So DNA is having the nucleotides, and these nucleotides can be used to stain with the ETBR. So what happens is, when you have a DNA, it actually has the nucleotides on the corners, and within these nucleotides, the ETBR molecules are actually going to be sit like this, and that's how it is actually going to give you the orange fluorescence. So once it intercalate within the nucleotide, it is actually going to give you the orange fluorescence under the UV lights. Then you require the sucrose. Sucrose is required for the loading die. Then you require the tris, which is actually required for preparing the running buffers. And then you require the bromophenol blue, which is actually going to be used to monitor the progress of the electrophoresis. Which means when you are loading the DNA from the wells, it was actually going to tell you how far you have done the electrophoresis, because that is very important to know, because otherwise how you are going to stop this electrophoresis. So this dye is going to be run in the front, so that it will tell you that okay, 75% is done or 100% is done, and once it reaches to this side or the end of the gel, it is actually going to be the electrophoresis is going to be over. So that time you can stop the power supply. So for running the horizontal gel electrophoresis, you might have to cast the electrophoresis. So the different steps to cast the agarose gel for horizontal gel electrophoresis is given in this particular figure. So what you have to do is you have to take a appropriate quantity of agarose powder, put it into a beaker along with the buffer, and then you heat up. You can do the heat up either using the split lamp or you can use the microwave. Once the agarose is melted, then you can just pour it into the agarose. So under the normal circumstances, we use the 0.8% agarose. So this is weight by volume. So what is in mind is that if I have to prepare a 50 ml agarose of 0.8%, so what I'll do is I'll use the 0.4 grams of agarose and dissolve it into 50 ml of water, and that is actually going to, and then you have to boil, and that actually is going to give me the 0.8% agarose solutions. The agarose powder is dissolved in a buffer, which is a TIE buffer, and heated, melted, and agarose. To heated to melt the agarose, hot agarose is poured into the gel cassette and allow it to set. A comb can be inserted into the hot agarose to cast the gel for loading the samples. In few cases, you can add the ETBR, the staining dye, within the agarose, so that it actually going to stain the DNA while the DNA is going through the electrophoresis. In some cases, what people do is they just add the ETBR within the dye, because you have the wells on this side. So this is the negative side, this is the positive side, and ETBR is a positively charged dye, whereas the DNA is negatively charged. So what happens is the DNA what you are loading into the well is running towards the positive side, whereas the ETBR, which is a positively charged dye, runs towards this side. And while the DNA is running, it is encountering the ETBR, which is running from this side to this side, and that's how the DNA is, the ETBR is intercalating within this nucleotides, and that's how it is staining the DNA while the DNA is running. And after that, what you have to do is you have to just take this gel cassette and put it into the UV light, and the UV light is actually going to illuminate the ETBR, and it is actually going to give you the orange fluorescence. So it is actually going to give you the orange fluorescence. So before getting into and try to see the result of this agarose gel electrophoresis, let me take you to my lab, where I have prepared a small demo clip so that you can be able to see all these procedures and you will be able to understand, and that will actually going to give you the virtual experience how to perform the agarose gel electrophoresis, and how you can be able to visualize that under the UV light, and how you can be able to capture the DNA gels. Today we are going to give you the demo of the agarose gel electrophoresis, which is being used to resolve the DNA. So in a typical agarose gel electrophoresis apparatus, what you need is you have a horizontal, you have the buffer chamber where you can have the two electrodes, you can have the cathode, you can have the anode, which is the black color electrode, and then you can have the cathode. So this cathode and anode will go and house into the buffer chamber.
connecting these cords to the power cord, you have the two different cords, one is red cord and the black cord. And apart from this, you also need a gel caster where you can be able to cast the gels. So this is the small gel tray which you can use to cast the agarose gels. And apart from that, you also have the comb which actually can be used to prepare the well. And besides this, the reagent what you need to perform the agarose electrophoresis, you need the agarose powder which you can buy from the Sigma or any other company of very high quality. Then you require the ETBR, which is a staining dye, and as you can see that the ETBR is being kept in a vial which is covered with the foil, because the ETBR is light sensitive and so it should be protected from the light. And apart from that, you also require the running buffer, which is the 50x TAE. And so let's start the casting of the agarose gel and performing the gel electrophoresis. Before you start the preparation of the agarose gel, what you have to do is you have to set the tray so that you can be able to pour the agarose into that particular gel, particular tray, and then you will be able to cast. So what you have to do is you have to take this tray, you have to very carefully clean the tray and with the water as well as so that it will be free of any kind of contaminations and any kind of, because you know that the DNA is very sensitive for the DNase and the other kind of enzymes. Then what you have to do is you have to keep this tray in this way into this gel caster, and then with the help of these screws you have to screw the gel tray, and you have to tight it, and as you can see that I am tightening it both screws simultaneously so that it will be got completely sealed. And then now once this tray got sealed and you are ready to pour the agarose, what you have to do is you have to first put the comb, and when you put the comb, what you have to do is you have to ensure that there is enough gap between the comb as well as the lower end of the comb as well as the tray, so that space the agarose is going to fill, and that's how it is actually going to help you to prepare the well. So for a typical agarose gel electrophoresis, what you have to do is you have to first prepare the 1x TAE buffer, and for a typical this kind of small chamber, you require somewhere around 300 to 400 ml buffer, and for the gel also you require at least 30 to 40 ml. So for a safer side, what we can do is we can just prepare the 50 ml agarose gel, and for a DNA of around 1 kb to around 1 kb, you can actually run a gel of 0.8%. Because as the DNA size will lower down, you have to keep increasing the size of the agarose percentage. So for example, if you are interested to explore the apoptosis or DNA fragmentations, in those cases the gel band or the DNA band what you are expecting is from 200 base pair to higher molecular weight. So in those cases we normally run the agarose of 2%, but in most of the cases what we do is we run around 0.8% agarose gel, and that is good enough to resolve most of the DNA sizes. So for preparing a 50 ml 0.8% agarose, what you need is you have to just weigh the 0.4 grams of agarose, and then you have to boil it into the microwave, and then you can prepare. So let's understand how to do that. Now what we have done, we have weighed the required amount of agarose, and then we have prepared the 1x TAE buffer, and some of the buffer we have poured into the chamber itself. And for preparing the agarose gel, what we have done is we have taken up almost 70 ml of the buffer, because when you boil there will be always a loss of some buffer. So what we have calculated for the 50 ml, and now we are keeping 10 to 15 ml of more water, because when you boil this you are going to evaporate, the water is going to evaporate, and that's how you are going to lose some water. So once you're going to pour the agarose into the buffer, and then you are going to do the boiling. So what you can do is you can use a microwave, and you just turn on the microwave, and what you have to ensure that the microwave is actually boiling the agarose and melting it. So in this process what will happen is that the water will going to warm up and the agarose is going to melt, and once the agarose is going to melt, it is actually going to swell and it is going to take up the water, and in that process it is actually going to make a viscous material or the viscous jelly like material, and that is what is agarose gel. So but before, because it is actually going to boil, it is actually can also come out from the beaker. So you have to keep stopping and keep checking that that is something what is not happening, and in between you have to always mix, because the agarose is made up of sugar, so it also can get charred if it get localized heating. And once your agarose is going to heat up, then you can be able to use that, and you have to ensure that you boil it very thoroughly so that all the granules what is present in the the agarose should be get melted. So let's check whether the agarose got melted or not. So for checking, what we do is we have a different kinds of the gloves, which the gloves like we're made up of rubber, and these are the gloves what you can use for touching the hot solutions, because our normal gloves what I am wearing right now is not good enough. So we have to heat up little more, because still I could see some of the agarose granules. Once this step is over, then you have to just take out the agarose. What you see now is the water is boiling right now, okay, and the vapors are coming out. So this is actually a rough estimate that you are going to lose somewhere around 10 to 15 ml of water in the process of boiling. Now what you have to do is you have to just let it get cooled for some time, and then you have to add the dye. So in this case we are adding the ETBR. So once it is get cooled down, then you can just add the 3 microliter of ETBR dye. And remember, ETBR is a carcinogenic dye, so you have to be very careful. You always have to wear the gloves, and you have to discard these tips very thoroughly, or very because you don't want to contaminate the environment. So this tip as well as all these buffer has to be discarded in a way so that it should not get out. So you add the ETBR, and then you keep this tip in a secured place so that you will be able to throw this in a trash bag, which is meant for collecting the carcinogenic material. Now your solution is ready, and I can pour this into your tray. So you can just pour this into the tray, and we have to wait for some time so that it should get solidified, and then we can load the DNA and we can run the agarose. Now you can see that the agarose gel is being solidified, and you can see that it is clear, so there is no granules or the granulate or the precipitated material present. And now what we have to do is we have to remove this comb, and we have to keep it into the chamber, and then it is going to be ready to use. So before you do that, you have to add some amount of buffer into this tray. So what you have to do is you have to add some amount of buffer, okay, and then you have to very carefully, without making any movement in the longitudinal direction, you have to vertically uplift the comb into the top chamber like this, okay, and that actually is going to prepare the wells. So what you can see now is the wells in this particular agarose block, okay, and once you are sure that there is no leakage and all these wells are good enough, then what you can do is you can unscrew these tray or the cassette, and we are going to remove the comb. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove this into the chamber, and then we are going to remove the comb. So very carefully you remove the comb, okay, and then you are going to fill the chamber with the buffer. So when you fill it, the whole buffer the gel is going to be submerged, and that's why this particular type of gel electrophoresis is called as the continuous gel electrophoresis. Now what you can see here that we can see the wells in the gel. So if you see the gel, you can see the well actually, and now we are going to load the sample into those wells, and then we are going to connect the chamber to the uh, to the electrophoresis power supply, and then it is going to perform the electrophoresis. So to prepare the DNA sample, what we have done is we have actually 10x loading die. So accordingly, you just take the DNA, you add the small amount of TE buffer, and then you add the loading buffer in such a way so that it's going to be 1x, and then you are going to load the sample. So in this case, we are loading the 20 microliter of the sample. So you're going to take the sample into the pipette, okay, make sure that there's no air bubble, and then you are going to visualize the gel. And what you can see actually, or sometimes if there is a problem in looking at the wells, or there is a problem of visibility of the wells, because sometimes the lower chamber or the lower background is also going to be transparent. In that case, you can just put a black paper at the place where you have the wells, and that actually is going to allow you to see the well properly. So let's see how to load this. So you hold your tip pipette, okay, and then you bring your tip next to the well, okay, and then you load the sample, and what you will see is that the DNA is getting filled into the well. So now see here how I am loading the sample. Okay, so I have taken the 20 microliter, and first I'll do is I'll take my tip into the well, and then I will load. What you will see is when I am loading, I'll very carefully, slowly I am keeping my tip out, okay, so that the whole well is going to fill with the tip. But what you have to remember is that while your tip is inside the well, you should not leave your plunger, so that it should not create any air bubble, because if that happens, the DNA will come out. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll connect this to the cord. So the black will go with the black, the red will go with the red. So before doing so, we have to put the lid so that there will be no evaporation of the buffer. So you just connect the black to black and red to red, and now we have to turn on the power pack. So in a power pack, you have a switch here which actually allows the turning on. Connected the chamber or the electrophoresis chamber with the power supply unit. We have set it at 80 volt, and now it is running. And what you will see is once the DNA tracking die will reach to the end of the gel, then we are actually going to remove the gel from the apparatus. And then since we have already added the ETBR into the gel, the ETBR is going to run from the negative side to positive side, whereas the DNA is going to run from the towards the positive side, because DNA is negatively charged and ETBR is positively charged, so they will run in a opposite direction. So while they are running, the ETBR is going to intercalate within the bases of the DNA, and that's how it is actually going to stay in the gel DNA into the present in the gel. So then after that, what you have to do is you have to take out this tray and put it into the gel dock machine, and that actually is going to visualize.
So once you capture the results are going to be look like this, where you can see the different types of bands, and as well as, so the gel cassette is placed in the electrophoresis tank, submerged completely, and DNA loaded into the well with the help of the pipette man and run with a constant voltage. So this portion anyway we have covered when we were discussing about the demo. The DNA runs from the negative to positive end, and ATBR runs from the in the reverse directions. Now, observing the gel in a UV chamber shows that the DNA stained with the ETBR as the orange color bands. So, this is a black and white photograph, but if you see under the UV light, it is actually going to give you the orange color bands. Where what you so in this particular image we have resolved the plasmids which are being isolated from the bacterial cells. What you see here is these are the three different forms of the plasmid, whereas this particular band what you see is corresponding to the cytosolic RNA what is present in the particular cell. So this is this kind of a typical result what you are going to see when you are going to resolve the DNA onto the agarose gel electrophoresis. So this is all about the isolation of genomic DNA from the host cells. You can use the prokaryotic cell or the eukaryotic cell, and depending on the cell type, you can be able to devise these strategies and isolate the genomic DNA. The only thing what you have to always remember when you are isolating the genomic DNA, since the genomic DNAs are very lengthy and they are very big, you have to be always be very careful because they are very sensitive for the shear stress, which means they are very sensitive for the shaking. So you have to you have to you have to take all of lot of precautions while you are handling the genomic DNA. Otherwise, genomic DNA is going to be present in the fragments, and then it will not be useful for the downstream genetic engineering applications. So in the subsequent lecture, we are going to discuss about the polymerase chain reaction, restriction, digestion, as well as the ligations. So with this, I would like to conclude my lecture here. In the subsequent lecture, we are going to discuss some more procedure related to genetic engineering. Thank you.